Hello everyone, this is Tynrael. Welcome back to another episode of New Horizons Modded Career in Kerbal Space Program. Today I'm going to begin with a very brief reflection on our space program and how things have been going, and maybe some minor spoilers. Here you can see I've got over 2,500 science. The missions that we have been doing recently, sending the probes to Lave and Lave, have yielded quite a large amount of science. And I will go through and analyze my options to see what the best use of this would be for future missions. But one thing that I want to point out is something about the probes. Now, this isn't necessarily a design that I'm going with as much as it is just to point out what I'm talking about. All of my probes had these spark engines on them, which are actually quite terrible, even for tiny probes. They don't have enough thrust to be at all useful. And I think that for future missions, I may attempt to use a dual engine system so that in space I could navigate using the more efficient engine, and then when going to land or back to the surface, I could just flip it around and actually have something that had more thrust, because the Terrier here has a max thrust of 60, whereas the Spark only has... what's up here? 18. I remember, I think in the beta and before, it was 30 thrust, and so I was used to it being more useful. These initial missions that we had where we sent the probes out was good for science and to find out more about some of the planets or moons that we tried landing on. But the next stages are going to be sending manned missions to... I want to land on Durso and Eli and Lave with people. So I'll be sending some of the scientists that I've been leveling up here in the sauna system, and so Bob isn't going to be alone in actually branching out and exploring a lot of space. So I look forward to going through that with you guys, and I hope you continue to enjoy the content. Last time we left off with a encounter with Lave with our Lave probe. And since then, I haven't done much. I arranged an encounter with its moon, Eli, which has very low gravity. I set up a polar orbit and began scanning, and I believe that is complete now. Let's take a look at the big map for this. So it looks like there are several craters. For biomes, we have craters, surface, slopes, and that may be it. I'm not seeing a poles or more than one type of crater. Although that area seems to probably be the lowest at 500 meters. I think that I will try landing with my giant engine and see if I can keep the rocket balanced enough to... I guess I don't even need to balance it. I can just control the SAS with my probe core and gather the experiments while I'm still pivoting around on the ground. But I would like to land on the light side. And in addition to that, I also have not gathered science from close to the surface in orbit, so I will burn retrograde to bring that down. Let's try 34,000. Well in space near Eli. So let's see what we have left to gather. Eli looks ill. You don't want to land. You don't want Eli looks ill. You don't want at land at all now. Okay, just making sure I'm not fumbling over my words because I'm talking and doing multiple things at the same time. I think Eli is standard, so that's probably something that's incorrect in the stock game. Not a hint of magnetism here. At least I think Eli is one of the... Maybe it's not. Maybe that's New Horizons. This looks definitely like a Copernicus height map. I will check that out some other time. But let's close this down. I think that I want to save my mystery goose. I can also analyze the data from the satellites, which is a good 76 science, and definitely make sure that I guess that it is off, it's just the bay is open. So if I log imaging data, it'll give me another 32 science. If I check my other radar, that's another 76 science. I also have the temperature and the pressure. It reads 0. See, that's the stock, which makes me think that Eli might be standard non-New Horizons, but I don't know off the top of my head. But then we also have the temperature, which is generic again. And I believe that's all the experiments that I can do right now. I will close that. And I might as well stay in this view. There's a nice view of Lave in the background. There doesn't appear to be a large flat area. Landing on the side of one of these very large mountains may be difficult, but at 9% gravity, I'm not actually sure how easy it would be to stay standing up. My SAS is turning off, which means that my batteries are dead. So I'm just going to recap something that I probably will cut most of out. For the low orbit experiments, I ran them all and I sent them all home because this is a probe and I'm not keeping any of the data to return home. But it was more than 810 electrical charge and whatever both of these solar panels were able to actually combine for electricity. And I've spent the last... I started down here. It probably took, I don't know, 8 minutes or so. I spent the last 8 minutes spinning around over Eli, just trickling in data to Kerbal so that I finally cleared out that queue of all the experiments that I had sent. And now I'm so far above Eli, I think I'm just going to warp back around and finally go for the landing. So this is probably close enough to decide to land. I'm about a minute and a half away from my periapsis. I'm going 500 meters a second. I'm a little close to some of the mountains. I think that I may wait until a little after the periapsis when I'm a little higher. Looks like they are declining over here. I just want to be able to counter enough of the vertical. So I think this looks a little safer. So I'll probably burn off my horizontal here. And then as I'm falling, decrease the thrust of my engines so that I can do a soft landing instead of overcompensating. 300 meters. And I don't have landing legs, so I want to come in under 5 meters a second, ideally. Under 200 meters from the terrain. $60 meters. See if I can kiss and maintain this. Nope, gravity's too strong to counteract that with just my reaction wheel. I don't think there's anywhere flat enough for me to be safe. And I may end up putting myself in danger trying to accomplish anything here. So I may touch down 1 or 2 more times, just getting experiments. Yeah, I'm not gonna keep messing around with that, because I think that it will end in disaster. We almost kind of landed on Eli. We just didn't have enough torque to have a stable landing. So I'm gonna stop putting this whole mission at risk and just head over to Lave. So I'm just gonna go between the normal and the retro so that I can creep on in as well as move towards a polar orbit. And I can finally get rid of this larger tank. I'm wondering if I should have maybe jettisoned that to try to land on Eli, but I'm not sure how much fuel I may need to slow down upon entering the atmosphere in case my parachutes don't pick up enough speed reduction. So it's a kind of a catch-22 carrying the weight to have the fuel to burn it. And I know that the spark engine that I have is not helpful at all, but combined with the chutes. And I'd also want to jettison this top part. I have to remember to do that. I think that we should be okay. If I had to guess, I would say that based on the texture, that the pole may be right there. Let me add a new waypoint. Lave pole, use terrain, set location on map. I'm definitely offset because I'm not catching the upper portion of the map. But I don't know if that is the pole or not. Without the orbital line to help guide me, I can't Can't judge what would be considered the poles. Now let's see if this shifts to a full version of the map. And that's too far away, but it looks like it probably would. So let's bring that down. And I appear to be having power problems again. Yep. So we have full coverage. Now, because of the power draw, I'm going to have to do the scans separately. So I will fast forward through these until I complete them. So the scanning of Lave is mostly complete. It's 9.1% missing. Oh, I guess it was just waiting to update on something. So I have 99.9% of the altimeter, which is fine. Let's take a look at the biomes. Surface, snowlands, impact sites, and slopes. I think that snowlands sounds pretty interesting. My Lave probe is here. So I will probably go down for some low orbit science. Jettison the top part of this probe because I will no longer need it, and then try to land in a snow area. I think that sounds like a good plan. Let's see what I get for science now. Collect solar particles. Still high over Lave at 83. Let's see what it's like around 72. Unfortunately, it will be in the dark. In space near Lave, 7.2 science. It's not a whole lot. The presence of snow would be fine if not for the lack of atmosphere at those altitudes. Oh, so there's probably snow on the mountains above the atmosphere. I will have to take a look at where the atmosphere starts because I don't actually know. I forgot since I last looked. Oh, it's already below that. I need to... I'm going incredibly fast. My parachutes are not safe to deploy at this speed, of course. Keep an eye on those. The barometer is having trouble locating an atmosphere. I'll send a couple experiments while I have the spark going because I believe it is generating electricity. Or maybe it's not. I'll also send a temperature. Temperatures are fluctuating more than I would expect. That is a very bright yellow. I wonder what's over there. There's also some hot pinks. .300 meters a second of delta V. Finally, at the cloud level, I'm not sure if I should expect some heating up at all. I'm also... I don't think that I have time to burn the fuel from those tanks, because everything is going incredibly fast. So I jettison them early to get rid of the weight and start maximizing. Oh no. I don't think I will be able to use my parachutes. No, they were destroyed. So the Lave probe was in play for almost 3 years, and it crashed into Lave. There's been a pretty bad luck with these initial satellites that I sent out actually landing on any of the surfaces. The last one wasn't meant for Durso, but it crashed into it. This one was meant for Lave, and it crashed into it as well. I'm really looking forward to getting air brakes, which are something that was added in the 1.0 release that I've never actually used. But I think it would be helpful to try using those in the upper atmosphere when I'm going 1,000 or 2,000 meters a second, just to bleed off some of that to use the fuel for just negating the vertical speed. But let's go back to the Space Center. Here we have our Titanus probe. It has quite a lot of fuel left at almost 9,000 meters a second of delta V. And this is the last of our probe missions that is still in play. You can see it is more than halfway to its encounter after leaving the sauna system. And I have this maneuver node shifting it out just so that I don't get duplicate information for the periapse information. But you can see that currently I'm going to be encountering it at about 3.5 million meters. And I have this node coming up where I will dial that down to get even closer. So the Lave mission went pretty well. Bob landed and is safely on his way home with hopefully more than enough fuel. I think that waiting that longer duration made it a lot less of a risk. The Lave system, however, was not quite as beneficial, or I didn't end up with a lot of science or a great experience, actually, in the Lave system, with my lander not having enough reaction torque or RCS thrust or anything to maintain balance on the rocky surface without me deploying the later large stage similar to this to actually land on it. And then the atmospheric height for Lave itself actually had me going way too fast. I didn't slow down, my parachutes failed, and I crashed into the surface. So rather than build better probes, I'm going to just up the ante and send people, because that way I will actually design the craft to be less generic like these probes and more specific to what is required for the actual mission in order to bring someone home. and that will be beneficial for also our science. Because I have 2,500 science, but that's going to be going pretty fast once I start spending it. So I hope this series is something that you guys are continuing to enjoy. And as always, feel free to comment, like, and or subscribe. And I will catch you guys in the next episode.